class of 1983. John Carlos, 1968 Olympic bronze medalist. In the 200-meter Hall of Fame class of 2019, and co-creator of one of the most iconic protest moments in Olympic history. And I'll share with you that this morning, I showed them my textbook from grad school. I think this is a photo that is familiar to everyone in this room. Next, we have Billy Mills, who is the 1964 1964 Olympic champion in the 10,000 meters, Hall of Fame class of 1984, and he created one of the greatest Olympic upsets of all time. Mr. Tommie Smith, the 1968 Olympic gold medalist in the 200-meter, Hall of Fame class of 2019, and the other half of that historic and powerful podium moment. And then our moderator this morning, who has plenty of his own tales from the track, Dan O'Brien, the 1996 Olympic champion in decathlon, Hall of Fame class of 2012, known worldwide as the world's greatest athlete. So Dan, please take it away.
All right, thank you. And I get that title, the world's greatest athlete, thanks to Jim Thorpe from 1912, to be recognized certainly. But we're so honored as athletes to be here in the U.S. Olympic Paralympic Museum, and we've talked a lot this weekend about stories, and that's what this museum has been created to do, is to relay these stories of these great athletes and these great accomplishments, and let people come in and see how they got there, how they did it. So I'm going to ask each one of these gentlemen just a quick question to talk a little bit about their background. But it starts with a story. And Billy Mills, how does a young man from Pine Ridge, South Dakota, get all the way to the Olympics?
My Olympic dream actually began when I was 8 years old and my mother died. As I mourned her, my dad said, "Son, you have broken wings, and it takes a dream to heal broken wings." He said, "Find your dream, it leads you to a passion. Develop your skills to equal the passion, bring them together. Magic happens. And one or two of the magical things you do just may be looked upon as a miracle." So he had me believing I could create magic. Then he died. We didn't have a car. I would walk him to the hospital at night, blizzard, a summer rainstorm, when he was having a stroke. It was a Sunday afternoon, and he said, "Son, you need to find me a ride. We can't make it walking." I begged people to take my dad to the hospital. Couldn't find anybody. He said, "We made it before walking, we'll do it again." Well, I'm 12 years old. I couldn't hold his weight. A car stopped and said, "I'll take you to the hospital." I got him in the back seat. I started to get in, and he simply said, "This is my moment. It's my journey, son. You follow your dream." The last words I heard him say, I thought he wanted me to be an athlete, so I just started running. A lot of my running was crying. A lot of my running was dreaming, and had health issues. Insulinoma is what it's called today. They called it diabetic at the time. I'd go low blood sugar. But I felt on a given day, I could be the best in the world. I came close to suicide. I got off the chair and wrote down a dream to use the Olympic 10K journey, trying to win a gold medal, to heal the broken soul. And that put me on a journey. 12 years of running. My career was the last 11 months of my running, where I won the gold medal, had a #1 ranking in the world, set 7 American records, 1 world record, a #3 ranking in the world in '65 in the 5K and the 10K.
Well, don't give it all away. We're getting there, okay?
So my dream is just a little. My Olympic pursuit is just a little unique.
We'll talk about your moment briefly here. Bob Beamon, all the way from South Jamaica, New York. How does a young man from New York dream about and get to the Olympics?
Hey, thanks, Dan. But first, let me just give a shout out to my other teammates that are no longer with us. Big Al Order, 5-time. My teammate, Dick Fosbury.
Yeah.
Just to make a quick point, my life has gone through so many different changes, but the changes have been very good for me because it's called growth, and be able to understand all of those things that you do go through, whether they're bad or good. Just a beautiful experience, even up until the day of really translating it all to you today. My first encounter with the Olympics was one summer at the high school where I eventually attended and graduated from, Jamaica High School in New York. There were 3 people that were on this program called Operation Champ. It was run by Dolly King, one of the famous people in New York, who hired these 3 incredible athletes to go around to camps in New York City. And they are talking about the Olympic experience. Never, ever, ever heard about Olympics. And these 3 athletes showed up with these Olympic uniforms. And I'm out on the track, just hanging out, and I see them standing there with these 3 Olympic uniforms and had USA on it. I said, that's pretty cool. And these 3 athletes was Donna De Verona, Wilma Rudolph, and my teammate that long jumped with me, Ralph Boston. And they talked about the Olympic experience. And at that point, I realized that that's something that I might like to challenge. And at that time, I was not involved at all in sports, but I was doing things that were out in the street that were socially unacceptable, and that would lead me to have one foot in the grave and one foot just hanging out there a little bit, possibly survive as a teenager. But the experience was so incredible. I did not get a chance to talk with Ralph Boston or Wilma. But Donna had this very interesting experience. She says, I'm going to take you into the swimming pool at the high school, and I'm going to talk about my experience, but also going to show you how to swim. And I said, I'm going to learn how to swim. And we went in, and she gave us this incredible, fantastic story about her dream and how she became an Olympic champion. And that really started me off. Now, as of today, I cannot swim.
Thank you, Bob. Wow. All right. All right, let's stay in New York. John Carlos, Harlem, New York kid. What were you like? What were you dreaming about?
Well, as a youngster, Yeah, at that time, our TV, most people in the community didn't have a TV. Our television at that time was the radio. And I heard this story about this woman swimming the English Channel. That caught my attention because at that particular time, I was the best bathtub swimmer in Harlem. As I began to grow, I swam in the Harlem River and the Hudson River. And then along the way, as this woman is swimming, they came on the radio and they mentioned something about the Olympic Games. And I went to my father, I said, Pop, what's the Olympic Games? He said, son, that's when the greatest athletes of the world come together, great of mind and athleticism. I said, well, but do they have swimming in the Olympics? He said, sure, son, they have swimming. I'm going to be a swimmer in the Olympics. And then I asked my father, I said, Daddy, they ever had a black swimmer to represent America? He said, no. I'm going to be the first. And I started training physically and mentally for that. One day my father says to me, he says, son, we need to talk. What's the matter, Pop? He says to me, he says, son, you're never going to go to the Olympics as a swimmer. And I'm looking at him saying, why, Daddy, why can't I go as a swimmer? I'm the best swimmer in New York. And he put his hand out, and he rubbed his hand, and I thought he was showing me he had a bug bite or something. And I said to him, I said, well, Daddy, why can't I go? He did it again. And then it dawned on me there was something that's wrong. He said, son, you can't go to the Olympic Games as a swimmer because you're a young black man, and they don't allow blacks to participate in water or aquatics. I said, well, Daddy, that's not right. He said, well, son, are you going to quit? Because I was dejected. I walked away. My head was down. I was kind of hurt about that. And he said to me, he said, you going to quit? And I said, no, Daddy, I'll find another way. And the God in the sky said, well, I got a way for you, John, that's unique. I used to hit freight trains. When I say freight trains, I would go break seals in the freight trains and discover things in these freight trains. I discovered they had food in the train, they had clothes, and a lot of the individuals in my community didn't have that. A lot of fathers were missing in action due to drugs and so forth. So I looked at this thing, and it related to a guy on TV named Robin Hood. He had his Nottingham Forest. Well, over there in the freight yard in front of Yankee Stadium was my Nottingham Forest. So when the trains came through, they had to pay a tariff. So I took food and I gave it to the people in the community, clothes, what have you. My payoff was make sure my father don't hear about this. But in any case, there was two policemen in New York, Mr. Lester and Mr. Bryant. And they showed me something, or they taught me something. They said, man, you know, a lot of guys that was with me when we hit them trains, they would catch these guys when we ran. They never caught me. Until one day, they walked up on me at McCoon's Park, where they built the new Yankee Stadium today, put their hand on my shoulder and said, you're caught. And I looked at them, like, what are you talking about? They said, we know who you are. We didn't have to run you down like the other guys. We ran you down with our eyes, so we know who you are. And they gave me a number to the New York Pioneer Club. I didn't know what I was running. I didn't know what track and field was. They said, what do you run? The police told me, get on the track and run until we stop you. I kept running. They forgot me. I was running. So the man said, what distance do you run? I said, I'm a distance runner. He put me in and run with the older guys. They were running 660s. So I started out as a miler. But as I got involved in the sport, I began to get a feel of passion and love for the sport. Then I got this competitive edge. And then I thought back about this Olympic Games. Well, there's a possibility that I can make the Olympic Games. Then at the time, they was talking about boycott. Now I don't know whether I want to go to the games or not. But God told me one more time. He said, John, you need to go to the games. And I would think that was probably one of the greatest experiences of my life. Not merely my activity on the victory stand, but the warm hearts that I met along the way, the bonds that I made for eternal life. So that was my quest to make the Olympic Games after he told me that I wouldn't be able to make it as a swimmer. Not to quit, but to move forward. And that's how I actually got involved.
Thanks, John. You could, I'm sure Bob could use some of those swimming lessons today. All right, Tommie, Tommie Smith, Clarksville, Texas sounds hot and dusty. How does a young man from Clarksville, Texas, and a family that large find his way to the Olympics?
Well, during those days, of course, I didn't see pavement until I was 9 years old. And it was something to me. I used to see it and beat it and look around and see if I did something wrong by beating on pavement that was below my feet. But with my dad, who was Ghanaian background, my mom was Indian background, they always told me, he said, boy, you do the best you can because there's no looking back. If you're looking back, you're detailing the idea that you can't come forward. You can't go forward anymore. And Daddy always used the term. Daddy couldn't read the Bible very well, but he knew how many books there were in the Bible and the way to church. So we had wagons. We didn't have cars. We had wagons with horses pulling a wagon. And I had 14. There was 2 children born before I was born, but there was 12 born after them. And I was number 7. And we had 7 sisters. And people ask me, well, Tommie, why don't you talk very much? Well, I was, you know why, thank you. It was difficult for me to talk. If I opened my mouth, I get beat up by my sister Sally. She was tough. Well, Sally was tough. But Daddy always said, boy, you follow the sign. And I always wanted to know what was the sign. He said, listen to this. And this was heavy duty for him. And I had never heard it before at age 6. He said, silver and gold have I none, but such as I have give I thee. And I always wondered, Daddy ain't got nothing, so how can he give what he don't have? He also told me, contribute to society the necessity of faith. And I said, well, Daddy, what is faith? He said, boy, I don't know, but it sounds good. So I went to the Bible and started looking up. Faith is all through the Bible. But my favorite is Hebrews 11:1. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. And I'm not going to tell you in this foursome up here that it feels kind of weird to be coming in second place 10 meters from the finish line. But I did that quite a few times, but I relied on faith. Don't give moving substance to something you don't understand. Just continue to fight, to move forward, and never return to the past. Always teach children moving forward. You don't have to understand where I came from or what I did, but you must move forward because that's how the system works. That's how the system procreates the necessity of moving forward. You do the best you possibly can. I pick cotton. You know what picking cotton is. Chopping cotton, cutting grapes, irrigating pastures, miles around, nothing but water, because you're irrigating from the San Joaquin Valley canals. That's where I'm from. Fresno area, Lemoore, Tulare, Hanford, Bakersfield. That's where Tommie Smith is from. So I worked in the fields all my life until one day, a guy from San Jose came to the house and said, do you want to go to college? And I said, yes, sir. He said, okay, we'll help you to go to college. Daddy's sitting there. So he said, college? What is that? I said, Daddy, that's at school. You always told me to go to school and do the best you can. See, I had never had that academic background of moving forward with the elation of making something. I just had to faith, substance of things, hope for, hoping, the evidence of things you haven't seen it, not seen. So there was something around the corner that I hadn't seen. And when I saw it, I kind of liked the taste of it. Although we didn't get the money that the guys and the ladies are getting now. But that's their blessing to keep moving forward. All you youngsters sitting out there listening, you don't have to live old. Maintain the idea of moving forward. And you old ones out there, you're not dead yet, so you can move forward as well. And I always created the idea within my passage of moving forward. Help those who you think needs help, because no one else is going to think for you. You have to move forward on that platform. And I've been in races many a day. I sat there and look at them, especially in 1968. I ran that race with a pulled growing muscle. And when you got people in the race running like this guy sitting to my left here, you just say, God, help us. Then I said, help me more. Because I certainly needed it. And if you look at that race, you saw what my dad taught me: do the best you can, no matter what's befronts you, do the best you possibly can. And when the time comes, faith, rely on faith. If you see that race, you'll see the whole procreation of my thought through my life.
And
Yes, you can.
Tommy, that moves us to the moment. You know, we'll talk about all of these people in the Hall of Fame and this museum. They were ready for their moment. And you said in that last 50 meters, something happened in that race that never happened to you before.
Yeah. I ran with technique, being 6'4" and having long legs at 36-inch inseam. That's long legs. And I couldn't use all my leg power, my leg lengths, because I didn't know how. Day before, I was talking to a person that said, use the arms correctly, especially bringing them back after you throw them forward. You bring them back, pump to the back, hit a notch, and they'll bounce forward, but then you have to push forward. That's the only way I moved past the guy who was leading, which is on my left here. He was leading. And I said, no, this ain't going to happen. This can't happen. So I started something using my leg in coordination with my strength. My arms moved differently, but my legs moved the same. And that was a fifth gear I had never pushed. And that was it. It was the technique move. Nothing different, all except speed. It's that fifth gear.
All right, we'll continue to talk about that moment a little bit later. But Billy Mills, 1964 Tokyo Olympic champion, first American to win the 10K, and here we are, how many years later, the only American ever to win the 10,000 meters at the Olympic Games. We've been close a couple times. You weren't the favorite. Tell us about your moment. How was it possible for you to hang in that race with the best runners in the world, an unknown? You know, I think people knew your name, but you weren't one of the favorites. Take us through your moment.
My moment, in so many ways, was so spiritual. The journey was to heal a broken soul. And Tommy Thompson Sr. coached at the Naval Academy, moved out to coach the Camp Pendleton Marines. So I read in college, your subconscious mind cannot tell the difference between reality or imagination. It'll have your body try to respond to both equally. So I started imagining winning the 10,000 meters 3 years before, and I would not allow any negatives to enter. So just an example. I wrote down in my book that God has given me the ability. The rest is up to me. Believe, 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 believe. And I did that about 20 times the 6 months leading up to the Olympics. The night before, I analyzed a year's workouts. I'm ready. I'm ready to be the best I can be. On a given day, that could be number one. So as I close this up, it was just reaffirming that I could do it. I'm going to get my track shoes the day before. A man from India stopped me. He said, I did an article on Jim Thorpe. You're Indian also. We call you a Red Indian. I said, we call you an East Indian. How do you think you're going to do? I said, I'm going to win, but don't tell anybody. I'm a reporter. He said, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to write the article after your race, but I'm starting with that question I asked you. I go to get my shoes. We have just enough shoes left for the potential medal winners, but I'm going to win. The response was, that's a bunch of bull. They escorted me out. Dick Banks, some of you track fans would know, He followed me out and said, I can get you some shoes. I said, no, that's charity. I'm not going to accept it. I go to Puma. I need a pair of shoes for the 10,000 meters. What's your name? How do you think you're going to do? I'm going to win, but don't tell anybody. He laughed and said, do you really think you're going to win? Give him a pair of shoes. Now, this is not me, but just getting my mind, subconscious mind, to prepare me that I could win. I said, I need a brand new pair of flats. So when I get on the victory stand, oh my God, to accept the gold medal, I want to be in new shoes. He said, give him a pair. I said, I think I can get third in the marathon. Can I have some marathon shoes? He said, don't push your luck. I walk out. I go back to my hotel room, and Ada Dassler had laid a half a dozen pairs of shoes on my bed. All he said was, I apologize for my American representative. I live up to my commitments. I said, I already have some shoes. He said, wear the ones you think are the best. I chose Adidas, and I said, I'm going to get on the victory stand in Puma. I get on the bus, sit down by this Polish girl. She said, USA, what event are you in? I said, the 10,000 meter run. She said, oh, today's the final. Who do you think's going to win? I almost said, one of many. But I thought I would lose some power. I said, I'm going to win, but don't tell anybody. She sat there quiet. Get off the bus. Don Jaisi in the decathlon, one of my Marine Corps colleagues, he came running up and said, Billy, I had this weird dream last night. I dreamt you won the 10,000. All I said was, hold the thought. And then the race is underway. I almost broke at the 5,000 meters. Rather than thinking I can't stay with them, I'm going one lap at a time. Took the lead to slow the pace. Clark took the lead. He slowed the pace. A major signal. It's too fast for him. We were under world record pace, running on a muddy track. 2 laps to go. They almost broke me. I took the lead to slow the pace. Clark goes right past me, sped up for about 20 meters, then he slowed the pace. I'm in the race to the finish. I'd been practicing sprints. My workout 4 days before was 200 meters out of the blocks, and I felt I could run with any 10K runner in the world, having a chance to outkick them. Then coming off the final curve, I'm pushed, I'm knocked outside, I'm closing, I'm going low blood sugar. And it was so spiritual. I'm going to win, but I may not get to the finish line first. That basically meaning I'm going to heal a broken soul. Then wings of an eagle. I may never be this close again. I've got to do it now. Lifting my knees, pumping my arms, wings of an eagle. The tape breaks across my chest. I came to a stop. An official came up to me. Is there anything we can do for you? I started crying and I said, I want my wife. We just celebrated 63 years of marriage. She came down to me, and I apologized because I said, we don't have the money for you to go to the games. I'm so sorry. Found out she had cried all day. So I said, I didn't realize going to the Olympics was so important for you. She said, it's not. I just know if I'm not there, you can't win. So I borrowed the money and took her. So it was a family unit, and breaking the tape, I knew that moment was a gift. I choreographed it. I organized it. I did it. But as soon as I crossed the tape, I knew it was a gift.
Thanks, Billy. Appreciate it. Bob Beamon, in 33 years from 1935 to 1968, the long jump improved 9 inches. in 33 years. And in 1968, you improved that long jump world record by 21 inches. You competed against Ralph Boston, a gentleman that you said that inspired you to go to the Olympic Games. How did you manage to come up with that performance?
It's a secret, man. First, Dan, I spoke about my teammates, Al Order and Dick Fosbury. You know, behind every great Olympian who's married or whatever or has a girlfriend, there's a wonderful woman that has made it possible for them to survive. But I like Robin Fosbury and Kathy Order to just stand up because these are two great. You guys made it happen. So my secret is, I was fortunate enough with my training. I was lack some important things that long jumpers normally should have. And we had two incredible athletes that were on my team that said, Bob, you can come and train with me. And the two athletes are sitting right here, Tommie and John. The interesting thing about it was that one day we were doing some 150s around the turn, and I'm running with John, and I said, you know what? I feel like I'm going to show him how incredible my speed has gotten. And I put about five meters on John, and John said, "Ho ho 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 ho! Oh, you in the wrong event, man. You get back over there in the long jump, because hey, you ain't gonna get me." But the competition was so incredible with our Olympic team was just unreal. Where I'm going with this is that the speed that I accumulated on that day was unbelievable. I mean, I probably could have run a 10 flat 100 meters. I probably could have run a 20.3 or 4 in the 200 meters. Possibly do a 400. I don't know. But my speed was so incredible. But I want to thank these two gentlemen for getting me ready for that big jump. Should I tell them, Dan, about the jump itself?
Yeah, yes, I think people would love to hear that.
So I was standing up at the...
In 5 minutes or less.
Jeez. How am I get my secret out? Anyway, I'm standing up at the head of the runway, and I'm looking straight down the runway, and I'm feeling my Cheerios. I've got everything going for me. And I run down the runway. My heart is beating, boom, 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 boom. And I go up in the air. I'm like 6 feet up in the air. I said, something's up here, and I looked at my watch. And I came down at 8 meters 90. So I thought maybe that might have been Al Order throwing the discus or something. I never knew what meters was. And so Ralph Boston, my teammate, said, "Hey, Bob, you just jumped 29 feet, 2.5 inches." And I collapsed. I mean, a dream that you never would ever think. I thought I was going to wake up. It was a wonderful dream. That's a good way to dream. And the fortunate thing was, it was for real.
Yeah.
29 feet, 2.5 inches. And I said, well, Ralph Boston and the Russian, Igor Tefanishin, was probably going to jump past it. But check this out. As of today, the record still stands as the oldest Olympic record in the history.
And we could do a whole nother discussion on how you parlayed that one jump to a lifetime of appearances and special events and everything. That's pretty impressive. Bruce Jenner did it in '76. One performance gave him a lifetime of remembrance. All right, let's go to 1968, Mexico City, October 16th.
That's right.
The night of October 16th. John, let's start with you. You were the world record holder. You broke the world record at the Olympic trials in Lake Tahoe. Had to compete up there at high altitude. They built that track specifically for for Mexico City. Your performance in Mexico. Tell us about that performance. And you won the bronze medal. You're probably more known for what happened after, but take us through the race itself and then what transpired.
Well, before I talk about the race, let me just say the 1968 Olympic team was a divine team. This team was like God picked individuals and placed them on that team. That's why they say 1968 was the greatest team of all Olympic teams, no matter what, by far. Not only were they great individual athletes, but they were great personalities. They blended together. They wanted to represent America together. It was just a spiritual moment. Relative to the race, for me, it was a formality because I didn't really go to Mexico City to win a gold medal. I really felt like I needed to win a medal because my purpose wasn't to go to the games just merely to run. I wanted to make a statement. So if you look at the race, with Mr. Smith, when he goes by, he has like a tailwind and you get sucked up in it sometimes and just go with him, Pretty much like with Mr. Beamon, when Mr. Beamon talked about how fast he was, he didn't realize how fast he was until we were kids, like teenagers, and we'd gone down to Puerto Rico for a meet, and we run the 100, and I said, Bob, come on, man, get in the 100. He got in the 100, and he got caught in the tailwind, and he has on his resume that he ran 9.3 for 100 yards, which a lot of people don't believe or know that Bob ran that fast. But relative to the race itself, I'm breezing on through the race and looking at individuals. There was one guy that really impressed me. I look at athletes in terms of where they are and, mentally and with their heart, how sure they are of themselves. And I remember I was running, I think, one of the heats, breeze on through, and I see this dude come up on me real fast, and I kind of catch him in my peripheral vision. I saw him after I rolled through the tape. I looked at him and I kind of waved him down. But I'm still looking through this peripheral vision, and he waves me back down. So I had to turn around and get the full view. It was Mr. Norman. I like Peter Norman's character. I like the fact that he was a great athlete. I like the fact that he had a lot of heart. So from that point, now we're going on to the finals. My attitude was, I'm not concerned about winning the gold, but I'm concerned about winning the medal. But I wanted my boys to know, because I have a lot of partners of mine that used to make a lot of money on me over the years, betting on my races. So I called home and I told them, don't make any bets, because I don't know how I'm gonna run this race. And when I got back to the stadium, I pretty much made up my mind that although I'm not gonna run for the gold, I want to set a precedent in terms of me letting people that know that if I wanted to challenge for that gold medal, I could have challenged for the gold medal. That's why Mr. Smith said I came off the turn first. I was first. But then I started looking around because like I said, I was more concerned about Tommie when he had his groin injury. And then I started looking around to see where I was in the place. I don't want to be that concerned about him that I missed the boat altogether. And I actually thought that we had it locked up first and second. I'd actually forgotten about Peter Norman's race. Peter Norman had the fastest last 20 meters than anybody I know in the history of the sport. And just at the end of the tape, the last 10 meters, it dawned on me, oh shit, excuse my language. Peter Norman. And you would see me in the video turn all the way from my left, all the way over to my right, expecting Peter to be there, and he was there. And I was mad as heck for a minute until we got through the finish line. I looked up at the clock, and I saw what Tommie ran. I didn't smile as much because I expected Tommie to do that or better. But then when I looked up at Peter Norman and saw that Peter Norman had run 20 flat, I was probably more excited for Peter than I was for Tommie or myself, because no white athlete I've known to ever run that fast. Peter ran 20 flat. But then at the same time, I looked at my race, and with all my looking around in the whole 9 yards, I ran 20 flat. So it made me realize that I was on point for what I wanted to do if I chose to do it that day. But like I said, I had bigger things in my mind than just merely winning a medal. But I'm just blessed enough that I would be in history with this guy here eternally. Now I got a couple more minutes, a minute maybe. I just want to throw some light on Mr. Beamon. Mr. Beamon, when we went to Tahoe for the Olympic trials, Bob got lax somewhat. When I say he got lax, maybe he didn't train as much in terms of his speed work. And I remember telling Bob, I said, man, incidentally, Bob and I grew up together as kids in the sport. And I went to Bob and I told Bob, I said, man, you.
What a tragedy.
I said, man, you missed the whole concept of the long jump. And he said, what are you talking about? I said, man, you didn't have no speed going that runway. I said, when we get to the Olympics in Mexico, you're going to train with me. He looked at me, he said, you train with me? I said, yeah, so it's Bob Beamon, Leon Coleman, Ronnie Ray Smith, and myself. We run these turns. Before we started running, I told Bob and everybody, I said, look, we have to get ourselves disciplined. So if the man come over, because the officials that was in the games, they was coming out rehearsing at the practice track as well. So they would shoot the gun, and I said, if anyone jumps the gun, immediately we have to jump down and break 15 push-ups. That stopped everybody from jumping the gun. You have to, wow, your arms get to the point where you better act right. So as we started progressing in our workout, Bob started getting stronger. And what I had to tell Bob was, I said, you never seen a plane back away from the port and crawl down the runway. When the plane backs away from the port and it goes to the runway, it stops at the head of the runway, it revs up that engine, checks its flaps, and then it takes off. When it takes off, it don't crawl down the runway, it blazes down the runway. Why does it blaze down the runway? Because the speed is the lift for the weight. And when Bob realized that and we got on the track, as he said, he felt so good and so strong running, I had to remind him, man, you a long jumper. You ain't no sprinter. What are you trying to do here? But in any case, the bottom line, what I'm trying to express is that for this guy, myself, Mr. Smith, Mr. Mills, there's 4 minorities right here. And I know darn well we are so blessed and we are so appreciative to the Creator that we were able to find our way through the maze and the hell and the tragedies that we had in our life to not only go to the Olympic Games, but make a model athlete for society to see for this day forth. That's it.
Thanks, John. So, Tommie, leading into those 68 Olympics in Mexico City, there was a discussion that there was going to be a boycott of that 68 track and field team, one of the best track and field teams ever assembled. Lee Evans was on that squad. Talk a little bit about, that. Did you guys talk, after the Olympic trials? Was it during the Olympic trials that you thought y'all might boycott in '68?
No, Dan, there was talk all over the United States about that.
Okay.
You see, at least the 3 of us went to different meetings. It was called the Olympic Project for Human Rights, not the Olympic Project for Black Rights. All human beings, and many people thought that victory stand was a violation of the Freedom Act of being an American. But we almost lost our lives trying to prove that everybody should be treated equally. And I was in college, John was in college, all the athletes that were involved in this mostly was college students. So we couldn't do a lot of things that people do without being in college. Otherwise, you would have been stricken off the team because of the social issue of color back at that particular time. That's one reason I majored in sociology and not physical education. Well, one reason also, physical education, one of the hardest majors there is in college because of all the necessities of science. Anyway, getting right back to the need. So Tommie wasn't a very talkative person. Action speaks louder than words to me. So when John came to San Jose, came on board with the fastest team in the history of track and field at San Jose State University, what were we called? Speed City. So we had to have leadership, not Tommie Smith leadership, but the leadership of a group. Who was the leader of that group? Dr. Harry Edwards, who formed that group, Olympic Project for Human Rights. It wasn't just track and field, it was other sports as well. So I would like to implement the fact now that it wasn't a fact of racism, only a fact of truth dealing with the Constitution, moving forward. I call myself an academician, at least I tried to be, because I was tired of picking cotton and cutting grapes out there in the fields in San Joaquin Valley. So I was trying to move forward. Now, dealing with the race real quick. I pulled a muscle in 1968 in the prelims. In fact, I pulled the muscle slowing down. It was an adductor muscle, a control muscle on the medial side of the left leg, which is my power leg. It was the inside leg. So when I hit the tape, didn't think that slowing down is as important as speeding up, as your car. Basic same thing. Man makes everything from his own image, moving forward. So as I came out, while everybody was warming up for the race, you know who I kept my eye on, right? I know exactly what he did. And I said, oh man, if I could just do that, I would feel better. And I said, my goodness, you look at that, if you have a possibility of looking at the 2 minutes before we got in the blocks, I'm standing there, scared. Yes, I was scared, Dan, of what I would do coming out of the block, because I know John was coming out of he always had a baby start, one of the most powerful starts I've ever seen. First 3 steps is like, a jet coming out off the tarmac. So I know I had to stay in tune. My power leg was injured. So I had to stand there and watch these guys warm up, take starting warm-ups, and I couldn't move because I was afraid if I'd work moving in the start, warming up, I would pull that muscle more out the joint where I couldn't run at all. That's why that turn had to be very carefully orchestrated until I got on the straightaway, until I could go straight and not on a turn. I pulled that muscle on a turn slowing down. So I didn't want to really eradicate the possibility of really yanking it to the point where it would bleed and I couldn't run at all. So that was my trial and error coming out of those blocks. And I knew Carlos was going to be out first. I knew that already. But I didn't know Peter Norman. I didn't know he had that speed. So as we came out, look at the race. We came out of the turn, the beginning turn, and I lifted because I was known for long leg lifting. But as I told you earlier in these previews here, that I didn't use my arms until the last 50 meters of that race. The only time I ever really used my arms. But that pulled me away from this
Let
guy.
me interject for a second. I had evaluated this race over the years, and I found out what it was. This guy here has no stomach. He has chest, head, torso, and legs. No stomach. So where people say, well, where did he get that from? He got it from where his stomach should be.
Anyway, I was very happy to know that I was in the race after it came out of the turn. I saw John on my right, and I said, let me see what I can do. So I opened up a little bit. My legs felt good. I was no problem. Then I started moving a little bit more. Then I said, okay, thank you, Jesus. And I pulled everything. That's when you saw. And as I was moving forward, John was looking around to find out where I was, but I was there. Then he looked around again. As he said, to find out who was on his right, and there was Peter Norman, and that's when we hit the tape, and I was already passed. I mean, I skipped a lot, but there's a history of reality within the last 50 meters of that race. Look at it and detect your own thoughts of it. That's all.
No stomach. No stomach. That's the key. I got you. All right, gentlemen. We're going to finish up. We'll talk about civil rights a little bit. And Billy, I'm going to save you for last. So we'll let the 68 team members just discuss the issues. You know, and you talked a little bit about Lee Evans, or you talked about Harry Edwards. But talk about that. You know, how influential Lee Evans and Harry Edwards were to the human rights movement.
Well, Harry was the leader of it, and Lee was very intuitive in what Harry was saying. I was busy trying to get the sociology stuff going, because my background wasn't of sociology. It was picking cotton, chopping cotton, cutting grapes, and running from my sisters and all that stuff. So I came in on the tail end of stuff, even at the Olympic Project for Human Rights. But I was a holder of more world records than anybody in the world at that particular time. So the focus was on me as a world record holder, you know. That's what my interest. But to get me there, I was in the cotton fields working with the reality of racism. So I had to include that along with that sociology and along with what was happening with the Olympic Project for Human Rights and how powerful it was even on the guys on the East Coast. These are my East Coast buddies here. I'm West Coast. I'm Fresno and Oakland, and these guys were New York and all that stuff. So they had a lot of stuff going. I'm sitting there looking at them. What are these guys talking about? Even now, we sitting at a table. Even now, they talk about things I knew nothing about. Even now, today. But the Olympic Project for Human Rights brought us all together on issues that initiate us as a group of people, a group of black athletes. You know, there's basketball, there's football, there's other sports also, other than track and field. But the track and field people at that particular time led the group in the reality of racist tendencies in a nation that has a Declaration of Independence. So that's what it was with Tommie Smith. I don't hate no man. What am I doing good to hate you? That's a waste of my time. So, silver and gold have I none, but such as I have give I thee. I got a brain to understand what the Bible. I'm from a Bible background, and you don't hate folks. Even Jesus was beat up and cut and shot and, well, over those times. So, my mind is the reality of life, the freedom of life, not the intuitive nature of killing folks and making things desolate in the life of man. And I'm going no further because I get lost back up in the.
I hear you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
John, you're a co-founder in the Project for Human Rights as well. Talk a little bit about, you know, your introduction to that and how you were, you know, as well as the influence for Harry and Lee Evans on yourself.
Well, you might say I was the fighter from day one as a child. But as I began to grow, I began to realize that there was a divide amongst the races. And as a young kid, you know, there's only two races that I knew about, the white race and the black race. But then I began to realize that we had a social problem. And I realized within that social problem that we didn't have no whole bunch of people that was interested in trying to solve the problem for fear. Many people had fear. You know, it's happening, man, but I don't want to talk about it. I want to close the door on it. Let's just try and move ahead. But I looked at so many people that was gifted by God, but based on racism, gifts that they had were overshadowed. And I always wondered to myself, I said, you know, I see a lot of guys walk around with bald heads like myself now. And I said to myself, I said, man, I could imagine how many guys, based on racism, that had the cure for heart disease or the cure for cancer or the cure for baldness or cure for impotency that never came to fruition, just merely based on racism. And I started looking for adults to make moves as I was a kid. They didn't make the moves that I thought that they should be making. For instance, that's why I used to hit the freight trains, because I thought adults should make sure that everyone had food in the cabinet. It wasn't happening. It's not like you turn your stomach off and say, man, I don't have the money, I don't have the food in the cabinet, so I'm gonna just disregard my stomach growling. But I'm looking around for people that supposed to be in position or in power to make it an even playing field where everyone have an opportunity. Then you get up and you start looking at the educational factor. You know, as you go into school, grade school, you go to trickle to high school, and then on to college, and you realize that if people have difficulties to getting into various colleges and universities, you realize in Harlem, where I came in, they had looked at the low end of the educational teachers. These teachers used to come and teach our class, they didn't know no more about the subject matter than we did. And if you question them or challenge them on it, they used to bring the big guys in, want to beat us down because we didn't have a right to have an opinion about what they were saying. So I'm looking at this and I'm saying, all this is wrong, man. It's just not right. And then I got married my senior year in high school. And I had an opportunity to go to college. I didn't know what college was. As I said, I wasn't into school. I didn't like school. My thing is to go out and make me a couple of dollars, help the people that I could help. And they told me, said, John, you have an opportunity to go to college, East Texas State University. I never knew about East Texas, never knew about the state of Texas, and I sure didn't think that Texas was the South. So I said to my young wife, I said, hey, baby girl, they just gave us an opportunity to go to college. You think we want to leave? And just at the time I got the invitation in the mail, I got another letter in the mail to tell me that I was approved for an apartment in the project. So now I'm thinking, I got a young wife, I got a baby, I'm a young man. I have this opportunity to go to college, but I have a great opportunity to have my rent with a ceiling locked in the project. So I had to make the decision. So we chose to go to school. Went to East Texas State University. I didn't know the extent of racism in terms of saying racism was affecting me personally. It was in my face, it was on me. Until I landed in Texas, and I saw this big statue, Texas Ranger. I thought that was a unique statue. But I looked over to the right of the statue and I saw a sign said, whites only. Right away, before I turned over to the left and saw the water fountain said, whites only again. I'm thinking to myself, wow, I made a mistake. Why did I make a mistake? Because I came there and I brought my wife and my young daughter with me, where I should have left them home and let me go check it out myself. But they were there with me. But then I noticed there was a difference in the restrooms, white only, and then the other restroom said colors. But I looked at the decor of the restrooms. White restroom was like you could fry eggs on the ground. It was so clean, pristine. The colored restroom had gnats flying around, water running, toilet tissue on the floor, like they didn't go in there and clean that for 2 days. Then I realized right away I might have made a mistake. I went to East Texas State and I realized that, wow, I made a bigger mistake because all the time this coach was trying to recruit me, my name was John Carlos, or my name was Young Man. When I got to East Texas State and the coach came out, the first thing he said to me is, you boys. And I looked at the coach and I said to him, I said, Coach, come here, man, let me say something to you. I said, man, I might not be as old as you, but I'm as much man as you. I said, I got a wife and kid here, man. Don't call me no boy again. You understand, Coach? And he looked at me, I guess he was kind of shocked at me being as young as I am and being in his ear, giving him that message. So he changed the word from boy, and I'm sure Tommie heard this word when he was a kid, and he called me a nigger. But he said nigger so fast until it sounded like the other word. And I started to lunge at him. My wife grabbed me. She said, oh, I don't think he said that. I said, he mighty damn close. He better be careful. And when I went in town, there was one white kid on the team, Terry Barnett. And Terry sat me down. He said, John, he said, man, I appreciate the fact that you're here with us. He said, and I want you to know it's going to be a rough ride here. Because East Texas State had just become integrated. It was the last school in the state of Texas to become integrated the year before I got there. He said, it's going to be very, very rough for you, John. He said, but I got your back. I'm with you all the way. He says, no way in the heck if we could win a championship, and Show can't win it if you wasn't here. Thank God that you're here. So I said to him, fine. So we went on, we did everything during the course of the year, and then bang, all of a sudden, the conference meet come up, and I go in the locker room, and the coach got to step down. We're going to run the 100, we're going to run the 300, we're going to run the quarter for time. And I got to get in the station wagon to go to the conference championship the next day. We didn't have no bus. We in the station wagon, sitting back with your legs in the flat. I told my partners, I said, man, I'm not running that today. This guy must be crazy. You think I'm going to run all this and then get in the station wagon, then I got to run everything at the conference meet? So he gets on the track. Now, this is towards the end of the year. They building a platform for graduation. And I come out the locker room, and the coach is over there to start, like you starting a quarter. Now, come on, son. Now, you know you my horse. When he called me his horse, I was offended even more. You know you my horse, son. Now, come on, give me a good time. And I had made up my mind before I left the locker room, I'm not running this for no time. I'm not running it. And when he shot the gun, I blazed off the turn, and then when I hit the backstretch, I started breaking down to a jog. By the time I got to the second turn, I'm walking. So I walked the turn, and I'm walking up towards the straightaway, the finish line. And he walking towards me, cussing me out, and he picks up a hammer where they was building the platform for the graduation. And I remember his son, Danny, was on the wall, and I said, Danny, I said, look, man, your father come in with that hammer. Maybe you want to jump down here and take this ass whipping for him. I said, because if he come at me with the hammer, I have no choice but to hurt your dad. And Danny looked at me and said, man, that's you and my father. I ain't in that. So he said some degrading things, and I remember taking my buck naked, took my sweats, my jersey, shorts, everything off, and threw it in his face. I'm out of here. And I went in the locker. And he realized what he did, and then he came in the shower. I was in the shower. He said, now, son, I might have been a little hasty. He said, Coach, you've been a little more than a little hasty. This guy would tell me when we'd be in the anatomy class, was Tommie talking about the PE, and he would tell us, know why blacks are so athletic? I said, no, tell me, Coach. Well, blacks have extra bones in their body. Blacks have extra tail. They have a tail. He's telling the class this. But a lot of the guys in the class would listen to it, but they didn't have the audacity, the nerve, or the heart to step up and say, well, Coach, show me the extra bones. I got a little money. I'm going to take my money and put it on the table. Put your money on the table. We got a skeleton right here. Show me the extra bones you was talking about. So he was offended that I challenged him on it. That's the way racism works. It's only one agenda, my agenda. You have no opinion. You can't make no opinion or decision for yourself. That's wrong. That is totally wrong. How could you say, I'm going to represent America, and then you feel like America is not representing you? That's like me saying I'm going to the war and fighting the war and put my life on the line for the war, and then come home and tell me I can't receive what I fought for to protect the right of everyone to be free in this nation. Before 1968, a lot of people, wasn't Tommie Smith or John Collins or Peter Norman that got up and make a statement for human rights? There was many more people before us that was denied. They buried them. They whitewashed them so they'd never exist because they didn't have the platform that Mr. Smith and I had. We had what the world was watching. It wasn't like they could say, turn the cameras off, because this was live, living colors. And why was it important? Because it was important to do it there, and many people have asked over the years, well, why the Olympic Games? Why not the Olympic Games? I said the Olympic Games was the pinnacle of the world. The whole world watches the Olympic Games. I didn't go up there and give the finger. I didn't go up there and pull my pants down and moon nobody. I got up and gave a very discreet statement out of respect of my parents and this country. But why was it necessary to do it at the Olympic Games? Because there were other people on other sides of the world that had the same perils and worse than we did as blacks in America. They never had a blueprint in terms of how to deal with racism or how to solve the issue. But when we did that, it gave them that blueprint. It gave them that self-courage to say, yeah, man, I can stand up. And to mind you now, we didn't never profess that we should burn America down. They talk about black power. And I tell Mr. Smith, and Mr. Smith tell me, he said, yeah, they talk about black power all the time. The black power was our black butts running up that track. That was the power. But it was black sincerity, black love, black loyalty to this nation. As I stated earlier, it's great to give your love, but it's greater to receive love. And we didn't feel at that particular time, in certain instances of the day, we don't feel that love. With the president that we have in the office today, he don't show that love, okay? Regardless of what you think of, I'm just going off of facts. When a man come and tell you, say, I'm gonna take all the minorities that work for DEI, we gonna fire them. Oh, but that's not enough. What we're gonna do, we're gonna go to all the black museums in the United States and we're gonna discredit them and take all the funds from them to close them down. We're going to take all the money from the black universities that we used to give. We're going to pull it back. Parenthood, we're going to take the money back. And then you sit back and I say, well, how many white folks step up like I did in 1968 to denounce what's going on? And it goes back to the same thing. It's a fear factor. I'm afraid if I go public and somebody hear me denounce what the president is doing, or if I go public and denounce what I see happening relative to the Olympics, I'm going to be penalized. I'm going to be put back. I'm going to be put down. You know how many times they put Mr. Smith down? How many times they put John Carlos down? I wasn't on the same plane as my brother Bob Beamon. They raised Bob Beamon up. When I went to the Olympic Games, they raised George Foreman up. Tommie Smith was on top, John Carlos on top. Bob was here. He and George Foreman, as we hitting the ground, rocketed to the ground, they rose to the top. And we were proud and happy as heck that they rose to the top. But it didn't diminish who we were within our hearts and within our souls in terms of us knowing who we are, why we are, and what our mission is. And our mission is not to be in the Colosseum in the Roman days and fight the lion. But our mission was to go out there and make other people realize it's not merely my responsibility to step up for equality, it's all of our responsibilities. And listen, hey guys, I know my wife will probably be mad at me again, but I always tell you guys, but anytime I get up and I speak, I don't like applause. I really don't. And she gets mad. They should have the right to applaud. I say, I understand that. I'm just telling you about what I don't like. I don't like applause because I tell people I'm not up here singing. I'm not up here doing a soft shoe dance. I'm up here trying to make a connection. And if I make a connection to one person in this room, my job is done. My mission is done. On that victory stand, all the world watching on TV, it's the first time that the Olympic Games have ever been televised worldwide in Technicolor. Our mission was to reach one person. And then I sit back today in modern day and I tell white folks, I say, you know, back in my day, it's like a black and white checkerboard. When they marched in Selma, or when they did all the demonstration, Georgia and everywhere, based on civil rights, and I saw that black and white checkerboard, I saw blacks had their cause, and I saw white people that stepped in and say, I support your cause. I'm standing with you. And then here we come 60 years later, and they want to do the same move. Well, you can't do the same move, and I'm talking directly to white folks. And when I say you can't do the same move, we appreciate the fact that you're in the picture to support us, but in modern day, standing in the picture is not merely enough. It's time for you to now to raise your voices and start to denounce racism, to start to put your friends and your family that's out of line with racism, to put them in check where they'll start to think about the ills that they're doing, not merely to themselves and their kids, but to society as a whole. That's what the demonstration of 1968 was about. Is security in here?
So, John, we want to thank you. Thank you and Tommie. Certainly that moment you made a lot of connections. You talk about that connection. You wanted to make a connection with one person. Well, here we are 50 years later. There are kids who are seeing that story for the first time who are 9, 10, 11 years old. That connection still is strong as ever. You can tell that you're certainly passionate about it. We thank you for that moment. You know, a lot of people wouldn't have been strong enough to stand up there and do that. We've seen some young athletes, protest themselves. Billy, I want to finish with you. You know, an athlete up here on the podium as well, or the platform as well. Not a lot of Native Americans at the Olympic Games. Not a lot of Native American representation. But you continue to speak today on the Olympic spirit and how that can bring people together, and the platform that gave you to continue to talk about it today. So I'm going to give you the last 3 or 4 minutes, 5 minutes to talk about what you're doing today and how important that connection is.
I'll probably take 5. What you're hearing are some athletes that chose to represent one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. They took a positive action. And the way I view this is they were condemned. The U.S. Olympic Committee condemned them. A large percentage of white America condemned them. Their lives were threatened. Attempts to kill them. Lives were shattered. I'll compare what they did in this manner. Here's a cause. The cause consists of racism. The cause creates an effect. What they did in Mexico City was voice their effect because of the devastation of the cause. Another example out of the White House this year. Because of a cause, young white boys being made to feel they're treated unfairly. Our leadership reacts to the cause, eliminating diversity, equity, inclusion. A great percentage of America supports that. The Christian right supports it. I've had our executive director read page for page, paragraph, word for word, Project 2025, which simply says, in a sentence, wanting to make America a white Christian country. I was taught in my life to speak honestly, truthfully. What we're doing in America today, afraid of addressing the causes. We'll share our emotions, our feelings through words, honestly, even though what we're saying may not be the truth. We have people in our judicial system, legislative, executive system, speaking honestly, knowing what the emotions and feelings they're sharing honestly is not the truth. They want to deceive, all protecting the causes. Truth, you heard the athlete speak, truth. Truth is an accurate expression of your emotions and your feelings. You want to share through words or through action, honestly. So coming from there, the core of what I want to say is what other countries are learning about us in America. My wife and I have traveled to over 100 countries. 12 of the last countries are teaching treaties that my tribe, other tribes have with the United States government. My treaty, Thurgood Marshall, 1981 said, there's never been a more ripe or rank violation of a treaty on behalf of the United States than the treaty with the Great Sioux Nation. Other countries are studying that. They're studying slavery. They're studying the doctrine of discovery. They're studying footprints that have been given birth as we try to pursue this incredible democratic experiment. And we're trying to let those footprints be washed away by the winds of change, the passage of time. No, the diversity of America, the voice needs to be heard. The voice of Olympians globally needs to be heard. I took from the Olympic Games global unity through the dignity, character, beauty of global diversity. I took national unity, local unity through the dignity, character, beauty of national, local diversity. Every child in the classroom needs to know the student next to them needs to know their diversity. That's our Constitution. We're empowered, but we have flaws. When he mentioned scientists, nuclear scientists using nuclear energy in a positive way to cure cancer. Their first dozens of attempts are flawed. They stay the course. We need to stay the course in this incredible democratic experiment. So I'll try to wind up with what I want for you to do. Read the doctrine of discovery. Other countries are studying the doctrine of discovery. They're teaching it to their students. Anybody here, raise a hand if you read the doctrine of discovery. It's the basis of why we are the way we are today. 1493, courtesy of the Vatican, encouraged by the kings and queens of Europe, the Pope wrote the doctrine of discovery in reference to the New World, Arctica to the Antarctica, based on 1950 archaeological digs. 50 to 90 million indigenous people in America. Our United States Supreme Court said we cannot own land. That's still good law in our logbook. That's why every treaty signed, every treaty was broken. We cannot own land. Pope Francis, 2 years ago this July, said the doctrine of discovery was genocide. Indian people cannot own land, the indigenous people. Land in the New World can only belong to the first Christian monarch that sets foot on those shores. They mark off what they want. Then land can only belong to the first male, white male, and his family. The indigenous people cannot own land. At the end of the wars, germ warfare, germs, weapons, less than 10 million indigenous people survived. Other countries are saying the most devastating genocide on the planet occurred in the Americas. We don't study that. 12 states require Native American history. So here's what was created as I wind up. Treaty signed, treaties broken, genocide. Now the land had to be developed, slavery. No words can describe that inhumane treatment of the innocent when the slaves were freed. Jim Crow. When I was in college, I read about de Tocqueville, the French scholar that came to America to study this democratic experiment. He left saying America can never be defeated from without, but America can be defeated from within, depending upon how they include, exclude, how they treat the descendants of the slaves when they're freed. That's, their treatment is what they were expressing. They were condemned. And how America treats the descendants of the indigenous people whose lands they took to create this incredible democratic experiment. Three months before I won the gold medal, the Civil Rights Act was signed into law. I went to Dr. Martin Luther King's church. I wanted to stand where those 4 beautiful young girls stood. My words now, putting on the robe to sing in the choir. spiritual, sacred. Maybe expressing their newfound freedom. When the bomb was thrown, boom, they're killed. I went to the Catholic University in Seattle, to their museum to see the photo, the painting of those 4 young girls, because it was painted like the Cherokee Indians would create a doll without a face, because their parents, their dreams, their community, their educators would help them create who they are when their life was taken. So what happens? Generational trauma was born. Generational trauma locked outside of the American dream. Economic poverty. Economic poverty brought a poverty of dreams. Dreams brought gangs, drugs, crime. Over here, privilege was created. Today, excluding diversity, equity, inclusion is because privilege thinks sharing equality is taking a right away from them. It's taking a privilege away. So generational trauma, privilege. They're etched into every fiber of our social way of life, our educational system, our political system, forever influencing or dictating the rule of law. I don't ask anybody to believe one way or the other. I ask, let's do our homework. Let's understand the causes that creates the effects. And then we decide, do we want to become an autocracy, or do we want to stay the course and fulfill the correcting of the flaws to enhance and build on this incredible democratic experiment?
Okay, Dan, let me say one thing.
I tell you guys, we could sit up here and talk for 2 more hours.
I just want to say one
Okay.
thing. Hey, I'm looking at the stair step. Old, older, and old. Well, we look pretty good for our age, but I just want these ladies to step up when I call their names out to actually see who is individuals that keep us as solid as we are, keep our minds focused. So I'd like for Mrs. Scholars, Mrs. Smith, and Mrs. Mills to stand up so the audience can see who you are. That's the 3 amigos there.
And what's interesting is not often do you see Tommie Smith or John Carlos without their significant others. I've had a chance to spend a lot of time with these gentlemen at different track and field events, and Billy certainly as well. And those ladies accompany them in a lot of different places. Somebody else I'd like to recognize that I think it would be a valuable resource for you guys to see. A new documentary has just come out about the Olympic Games in Atlanta, how those games were brought to Atlanta, and they were brought to Atlanta amidst the civil rights movements. And so Mr. George Herthler, the documentarian, is in the crowd today. Look for that documentary, the Atlanta Games in black and white, and it's I get to do some speaking in that documentary.
May I make one final comment, kind of as a form of a prayer?
Sure.
The countries we visited to, the last 12, are looking for women, young women from the United States of America, indigenous women, the descendants of the lands who built this country, the descendants, the women, the descendants of the slaves. Then all women from the United States of America for hope, for direction, for a clarity of mind, for them to have a purpose in building a better world. And I want to let you women know the countries we visited, they study, they pray, they hope. They've told Pat and I what happens and what the women do in the United States of America is either our celebration or our demise. So in a sense of a prayer, I thank our women.
Thanks, Billy. Thank you, everyone. This was a great panel. I'll turn it back over.
Yeah, this has been incredible. I just want to thank all of our panelists and our moderator for being here today. These incredible gentlemen are going to be up in our galleries later today doing some meet and greets, so I invite everyone to explore the museum. Thank you so much for coming.
Well, you guys talking about
Hey.